Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and welcome back to our little project on our 2012 Polaris 900 XB RZR. Today we're going to be mainly concerned with just getting the motor back inside of this frame, but there's a couple of things we need to do first. We need to go ahead and get the starter remounted and a few other small pieces that need to go on the engine. Then we can just hoist it into the chassis and lower it down. So if you're ready, let's get started. Alright guys, when you put in your spark plug, make sure you use an actual spark plug socket. Reason being, if you just use a regular one, it's going to allow it just to drop, and that's going to be plenty enough distance to actually bend that electrode, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure you have one of these. That way it holds it in place. Alright, we've got our plugs in. Let's go ahead and get them torqued down to 7 foot-pounds. Whenever I do a rebuild, pretty much if it's a gasket or if it's made out of rubber, I go ahead and replace it. You'll thank yourself in the long run. Next, make sure that goes in there without ripping it, which I've seen happen before. Put just a light coating of grease all the way around it. That way it'll help slide in there and seal it up. That minuscule amount of grease that may get in the coolant ain't gonna matter. Guys, before you put the water pump on, you want to make very certain that you line it up with the oil pump shaft. See that groove? That's where it's got to line up. Otherwise, you can damage either the water pump or the oil pump, and we don't need that. So make very sure that it's engaging properly before you start, tightening it down. Rule of thumb there, guys: if you can't push that water pump all the way in with your hand, you don't have it aligned right. Do not use these to force it in there. If you do that, it's damaged. Also notice that you've got 3 bolts, but 2 of them are one length. One of them's just a little bit shorter. That's the one that goes more toward the bottom right here. Next, let's go ahead and get our old cooler mounted, that O-ring back in place. Next, let's get that water inlet in place. Make sure you get all the gasket off of there, because if you don't, chances are it's going to leak. Since we're right at it, let's go ahead and get this oil filter on. Don't forget, put a little bit of oil on that seal right there. All right, let's go ahead and get our thermostat housing on. All right, next let's go ahead and get our intake boots on. Make sure you've got this little section, this little scalloped section, faces up. And check the condition of your O-ring. But you can't just order the O-ring, so if there was a problem, you'd have to replace the entire boot. This one still looks to be in pretty good shape, so I'm going to go ahead and put them back on. Alright guys, that's everything we can do with it still on the engine stand. What's next? Bring over the cherry picker, get it lifted off, then we're going to lower it down into the chassis. And while we've still got it in the air, let's go ahead and get that starter bolted back on. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get that engine coupler in place. Before we do that, let's go ahead and put on some anti-seize on these threaded spacers, just a little bit on each one. Now when I pulled the engine out, I actually took out the coupler with the engine. Was that wrong? Well, I guess a little bit. It's going to be a little bit more complicated to get everything back in there and aligned correctly, but we will persevere. All right, we want to screw them in, but not all the way to where they're protruding past the edge of the transmission. So once we get the adapter plate in there and then get the engine swung in, we bring over an alignment tool that will center and distance out the engine and the transmission. When I say distance out, the distance in between the input shaft here and the output shaft of the engine. Goes in just like this, guys. All right, let's go and get that second one in. There we are. Barely threading them on, so we got plenty of movement for that adapter to go in between the engine and the transmission. Alright, let's go ahead and get those other two threaded inserts into the engine, and let's go ahead and sling it in. Alright, she's fairly close. Just trying to wiggle her in here. There's two. And once again, put all these in just hand tight. And four. Alright, let's get these other three bolts in there. Alright, we have all the bolts in there just loosely. Now let's go ahead and get that alignment piece in there and start the procedure to torque all this stuff down. Alright, this particular tool is going to be using number 2. And goes right over that. Then you just use your bolt that's holding in your drive clutch and thread it in. This is going to be where she needs to stay. Alright guys, we've got everything in there just hand tight, but there's a very specific procedure you have to go through to do this, to get the final torque setting on it. That threaded spacer, number 1 on the diagram, what we want to do is tighten that down to just 10 foot-pounds. You want to be careful that your number 2 is backed up far enough to give number 1 distance or room to go in. After that, then we're going to bring in number 2, and you have to have this special tool to reach around number 1 and only grab number 2. At that point, we're going to bring the jam nut to 33 foot-pounds. Once those two are taken care of, then we just do number 3 to 75 foot-pounds. Alright, so we want to grab just this outside section and take it to 10 foot-pounds. It's a very small edge. It's not very thick. You have to grab onto using this tool, and it's only 10 foot-pounds. There it is. 1 down, 3 to go. So see, if you did not have this special tool, what would happen is you'd be grabbing both the jam nut and that threaded spacer. And guess what? It's pushing against that coupler and pulling this back, so you're running the risk of actually breaking your engine cases. So do yourself a favor, go find this tool online somewhere. Alright, now let's get those jam nuts run in and take them to 33 foot-pounds. Alright, let's get all 4 of those 3 bolts. Each one is set to 75 foot-pounds. We'll go ahead and get the transmission side first. There she goes. There. We only have 4 more motor mount bolts to take care of on the front side, and we need to set those to 40 foot-pounds. Alright, she is in there now, torqued down. So let's get this alignment tool out of the way. Now it's time to get some things hooked up on this engine. Let's start with the radiator hoses. One up at the top, and one hidden down here. Alright, now with the radiator hoses hooked up, let's go ahead and get the exhaust gasket seals in there. You want to use new ones, because otherwise it won't seal up properly. Now let's get these exhaust headers wiggled in there. If you remember when I took them out, pretty much had to come out together. They're so intertwined. Alright, when I'm putting these in, I'm only putting them in, just barely hand tight, because we may need to move them around to attach them to the rest of the exhaust. So we want to have a little wiggle room. Alright, with the mufflers locked down, let's go ahead and get the headers tightened down. Told you it was going to move around a bunch. Granted, this is an aftermarket system, so the stock system may not be that bad, but I'd still approach it about the same way. Alright, with this particular system, the rest of the exhaust is just held in place by springs. Is it going to fall off without it? I seriously doubt that, but we'll go ahead and put it back the way they had it. Next, we can go ahead and start getting those cross members back in. Let's go ahead and get those spark plug leads up and out of the way and get them in position. Next, let's go ahead and get that oil tank in. Front bracket in. Now we just need to bring in the back one. Remember, it's actually made up of two pieces. More or less just kind of pinches it together like that. Alright, focusing back on our oil can. We're going to get the send and return lines that actually go to the crankcase. Don't want to over tighten these, but you sure don't want to leave them loose. So if they came off, you'd say bye-bye to all that work that we just did on the engine. That's where the breather line used to go to, but we're not going to be going there anymore. With this system that they had on here, I mean, they were basically just rerouting all the vent lines and the breather lines and the air intake lines. So a lot of this stuff I'll have to, bring in the factory stuff because I'm doing away with all of it. But for the time being, I'm just going to let it, vent right where it is to at least get it started up, make sure everything's going to sound all right with it, and then I'll have to come back and add in the other pieces that are missing later. All right, with the oil tank in place, let's go ahead and start working on the intake. Go ahead and bring around our throttle bodies, get that cable rerouted the right direction. Just going to spray just a little bit of contact cleaner in there. That'll make it easier to get the throttle bodies to go in. Alright, let's get some of our wiring taken care of before we get the rest of the intake on. Throttle position, right there. Then there should be a little thermostat temp right there. That's the crankshaft position sensor. Before we do that, let's go ahead and bring over our starter wire, feed it over. And when you're doing this, you definitely want to have the battery disconnected. Next, let's go ahead and get the negative side on. Remember, it had that post that stuck out on one of the bolts that actually holds the starter in place. That's where our crankshaft position sensor is. There. This is an O2 sensor, and that was actually for the programmer that was on this machine, but we're no longer going to be using because we're just going back stock. Next, let's get the two fuel lines hooked back in. One here, which I believe is the send. Push that clip on. That's all it holds it in place. And the return is right here on the bottom left. Same thing. Push in, then push that clip up. Then we need to bring over our fuel injectors. And if you remember correctly, I actually labeled them just right and left. All right, let's finish getting this air intake back on. All right, let's go ahead and get our cram back in there. Make sure it's seated all the way around. And make sure your clamp's actually in the groove. Now let's tighten it down. Get this upper vent line in place. All right, let's get that stator output hooked up. Just got your 3 phases right here. It's AC, so it doesn't matter. Just make sure you get the clips to go in like this. All right, and before we make a big mess, remember this one had that external oil pressure gauge. We need to go ahead and get it in. Otherwise, it's just going to blow out all the oil that I'm about to put in it. And chances are you won't have this particular thing on your razor. This is the clutch cover, the rear cover. Let's say we've got 7 10mm bolts. When you're putting this in, you want to make sure you bring up all your fuel lines and electrical and everything up, because it basically rests on top of it in these couple of channels. All right, with that backing plate in place, let's go ahead and get our clutches on. Go ahead and get our drive clutch in first. It's just a standard right-hand thread. Put something through here to keep it from rotating it. And we're going to torque it to 96 foot-pounds. There we go. Next, let's get on the driven clutch. We're going to torque this one to 40 foot-pounds. Next, we want to walk our belt on. When you put it on, you want to make sure that whatever writing is on it is facing you, going left or right. The belt direction is going to be this way, as indicated by those arrows. All right, next, let's go ahead and put some antifreeze in it. There's a bleeder screw on the back on the engine itself. You want to have that out or loose as you're filling it up. That way it'll just force the air out. All right, next, let's go ahead and get some oil in this thing. When it's bone dry, its full capacity is about 3.5 quarts. There's a lot of different opinions as far as when you're breaking in a new engine or breaking in a rebuilt engine. Well, listen, I actually asked Polaris themselves, what oil do I need to use? They said, break it in with the same oil that you're going to run in it. So we're going to go with their PS4. All right, guys, let's get this battery back in there. All right, guys, now it's the moment of truth. Let's see what she does. All right, guys, well, that's sounding pretty promising. Still a lot of work to be done. A lot of plastic's got to go back in place. The rest of this mess has to come off. And you're welcome. So, that's pretty much it for this project, or as far as we're going to take it with this particular video. I still have a lot of work to do, but knowing that engine's going to start when I get it all finished, it makes me feel pretty good. Well, listen, if you need any of the parts that we used for this build, come see us at Partzilla.com and we can get you taken care of. Have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below and I'll do my best to answer them. And until then, we just want to say thanks for watching.